It was a bustling Friday evening at Elegant Bites, a high-end restaurant known for its luxurious ambiance and exclusive clientele. The air was filled with the soft clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations, and the rich aroma of gourmet dishes. Among the diners was Amara Johnson, a 32-year-old freelance journalist with a reputation for uncovering hard truths. She sat at a corner table sipping a glass of wine while waiting for a friend. Her presence was striking. Her natural hair styled in a sleek afro, her demeanor calm yet confident. She was one of the few black women in the restaurant that night, and though she didn't mind standing out, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Near the entrance stood Marcus, the restaurant's head security guard. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, Marcus had a stern expression and a reputation for being strict. He scanned the room with sharp eyes, his presence meant to ensure order. But there was something about the way he looked at certain guests, something that made Amara uneasy. Amara's friend was running late, so she decided to step outside to make a quick phone call. As she walked toward the exit, Marcus stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice firm, but with an edge that made Amara pause. "Can I see your receipt?" Amara frowned. "My receipt? I haven't left yet, I'm just stepping out to make a call." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "We've had issues with people dining and dashing. I need to make sure you've paid." Amara's heart raced as she felt the weight of stares from nearby diners. "I'm a paying customer," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I haven't even finished my meal. You can check with the staff if you don't believe me." Marcus stepped closer, his tone growing harsher. "I don't have time for this. Show me your receipt or I'll have to escort you out." Amara's cheeks burned with humiliation. She reached into her bag to pull out her phone, intending to call the manager. But before she could explain, Marcus grabbed her arm. "Don't make a scene," he hissed. What happened next was a blur. Amara tried to pull away, but Marcus's grip tightened. And then, slap. The sound echoed through the restaurant. Time seemed to freeze as Amara stumbled back, her hand instinctively touching her stinging cheek. The room fell silent. Everyone stared, but no one moved. No one spoke. Amara's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She looked at Marcus, who now seemed to realize the gravity of what he had done. His face paled, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he muttered, "You shouldn't have resisted." Amara's mind raced. She felt a mix of anger, shame, and disbelief. But beneath it all, a fire ignited within her. She wasn't just going to let this slide, not this time. As she walked out of the restaurant, her phone buzzed. It was her friend, apologizing for being late. But Amara barely registered the message. Her thoughts were consumed by one thing. This wasn't over. Amara didn't go home that night. Instead, she drove to a quiet park, her hand still trembling on the steering wheel. The sting on her cheek was a constant reminder of what had happened, but it was the fire in her chest that kept her moving. She parked under a dim streetlight, pulled out her laptop, and began to type. Words poured out of her, raw, unfiltered, and filled with emotion. She documented every detail of the incident, the way Marcus had singled her out, the humiliation she felt, the slap that silenced the entire restaurant. She titled her draft, "The Slap That Broke the Silence." But as she wrote, questions gnawed at her. Why had Marcus been so quick to accuse her? Was it her race? Her appearance? Or was there something deeper going on? Amara knew she couldn't just publish her story without answers. She needed evidence. She needed the truth. The next morning, Amara returned to Elegant Bites. This time she wasn't there to dine, she was there to investigate. Dressed in a sharp blazer and sunglasses, she blended in with the lunch crowd. She observed Marcus from a distance. He was back at his post, his expression unreadable. He seemed calm, almost too calm, as if nothing had happened the night before. Amara approached the hostess, a young woman named Lila, who had been working the night of the incident. "Hi," Amara said with a warm smile. "I was here last night, and I think I left my earring at my table. Do you mind if I take a look?" Lila hesitated but nodded. "Sure, let me check." As she led Amara to the table, Amara casually brought up the incident. "I heard there was some commotion here last night, something about a security guard?" Lila's face tightened. Yeah, it was intense, but we're not supposed to talk about it. Amara's curiosity deepened. Why not? Did something happen? Lila glanced around nervously. Look, I don't want to get in trouble, but that guard, Marcus, he's been acting weird lately, like really aggressive. A few of us have complained, but management doesn't seem to care. Amara's pulse quickened. This was the lead she needed. Do you think he's done something like this before? Lila lowered her voice. I've seen him target certain people, mostly women, mostly people of color, but no one ever says anything. They're too scared, or they don't think anyone will believe them. Amara's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about her. This was a pattern, a dangerous one. She thanked Lila and left the restaurant, her mind racing. She needed to dig deeper. She needed to find others who had experienced Marcus's aggression. Over the next few days, Amara reached out to former employees of Elegant Bites, posting in local community groups and forums. Slowly, stories began to surface. A former waitress named Tasha shared how Marcus had once cornered her in the storage room, accusing her of stealing. A delivery driver named Carlos recalled being harassed and threatened by Marcus for parking in the wrong spot. And then there was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly black woman who had been refused entry to the restaurant because Marcus claimed she didn't fit the dress code. Each story added another layer to the puzzle. Marcus wasn't just a security guard with a bad temper. He was a man who abused his power, targeting those he deemed lesser. And the restaurant's management had turned a blind eye, allowing his behavior to continue unchecked. Amara knew she had enough to publish her story, but she also knew that exposing Marcus wasn't enough. She needed to hold Elegant Bites accountable. She needed to make sure this never happened again. But as she prepared to take her findings public, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What if Marcus wasn't acting alone? What if there were others protecting him? And more importantly, what would happen when the truth came out? Amara's investigation was gaining momentum, but she knew she had to tread carefully. She couldn't risk tipping off Marcus or the restaurant's management before she was ready to reveal everything. She decided to reach out to Evelyn, a former manager at Elegant Bites who had left the restaurant under mysterious circumstances. Evelyn had always been kind to Amara during her visits, and Amara hoped she might be willing to talk. They met at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. Evelyn looked nervous, constantly glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to follow her. "Amara," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "you're playing with fire. Marcus isn't just some rogue security guard. He's connected." Amara leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "Connected? What do you mean?" Evelyn hesitated, then sighed. "Marcus has ties to the owner of Elegant Bites, Victor Langston. They go way back. Victor hired Marcus personally, and no matter how many complaints come in, Marcus never faces consequences. It's like he's untouchable." Amara's eyes widened. Victor Langston was a well-known figure in the city, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for being ruthless. If Marcus was under his protection, this went much deeper than she had imagined. "Do you think Victor knows about Marcus's behavior?" she asked. Evelyn nodded grimly. "I'm sure of it. I tried to bring it up once and Victor shut me down immediately. He said Marcus was essential to the restaurant's security and that we shouldn't question his methods. After that, things got uncomfortable. I left soon after." Amara's mind raced. This wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about Victor Langston and the system that allowed men like Marcus to thrive. She needed to find a way to expose both of them, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. Victor had money, power, and influence. If she wasn't careful, she could end up silenced, or worse. That evening, Amara sat at her desk, staring at the mountain of evidence she had gathered. There were witness statements, photos, and even a few shaky videos of Marcus's aggressive behavior. But it wasn't enough. She needed something concrete, something that would force people to take notice. Then she remembered something Evelyn had said. Marcus and Victor go way back. What if there was more to their relationship than just business? Amara decided to dig into Marcus's past, hoping to find a connection that could bring everything to light. After hours of searching through public records and old news articles, she stumbled upon a shocking revelation. 15 years ago, Marcus had been arrested for assault. The charges were dropped, but the victim's name stood out: Sophia Langston, Victor's younger sister. Amara's heart pounded as she pieced together the timeline. Sophia had accused Marcus of attacking her during a family gathering, but the case never went to trial. Victor had intervened, using his influence to sweep the incident under the rug. Marcus was let off with a warning, and Sophia had moved away shortly after, cutting ties with her family. This was the missing link. Marcus wasn't just Victor's employee. He was his protector, and Victor had been protecting Marcus in return, covering up his violent behavior for years. Amara knew she had hit gold. This was the story that could bring them both down. But as she prepared to publish her findings, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What would Victor do to protect his secrets? And more importantly, was she ready to face the consequences of exposing them? Amara knew she couldn't act alone. Exposing Victor Langston and Marcus required a strategy, allies, and undeniable proof. She reached out to Sophia Langston, Victor's estranged sister, hoping she would be willing to speak out. After days of searching, Amara finally found Sophia living in a small town hours away from the city. She sent her a carefully worded email explaining her investigation and the connection she had uncovered. To her relief, Sophia responded almost immediately. "I've been waiting for someone to find the truth," she wrote. "I'll meet you." They arranged to meet at a quiet park, far from prying eyes. Sophia arrived first, her face lined with years of pain and regret. She was in her late 40s now, but the trauma of what had happened still haunted her. "I tried to tell people back then," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "But no one believed me. Victor made sure of that. He said I was lying, that I was trying to ruin Marcus's life. But the truth is, Marcus ruined mine." Amara listened intently as Sophia recounted the night of the assault. Marcus had been drunk and aggressive, and when Sophia tried to stop him from harassing another guest, he turned on her. "He slapped me just like he did to you," Sophia said, her eyes filling with tears. "But back then, I didn't have the courage to fight back. I just left." Amara's heart ached for Sophia, but she also felt a renewed sense of purpose. Sophia's story was the missing piece of the puzzle. It proved that Marcus's behavior wasn't just a recent development. It was a pattern, one that Victor had been enabling for years. With Sophia's permission, Amara recorded their conversation and gathered any documents Sophia had from the time of the incident. She also reached out to other victims of Marcus's aggression, compiling their stories into a comprehensive dossier. The evidence was overwhelming: witness testimonies, photos, videos, and now Sophia's first-hand account. But as Amara prepared to publish her story, she received an anonymous message. It was short and chilling. "Stop digging. You don't know what you're messing with." Amara's stomach churned. She had expected pushback, but this felt different. It felt personal. She knew Victor and Marcus wouldn't go down without a fight, but she also knew she couldn't back down now. Too much was at stake. She decided to take her story to Elena Martinez, a seasoned investigative journalist with a reputation for taking on powerful figures. Elena had covered high-profile corruption cases before, and Amara trusted her to handle the story with care. They met at Elena's office, where Amara laid out everything she had uncovered. Elena listened carefully, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "This is big," she said finally. "But it's also dangerous. Victor Langston isn't just some businessman. He's connected to people who will do anything to protect him. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Amara nodded. "I don't have a choice. If I don't do this, who will?" Elena agreed to help, and together they began drafting the exposé. They decided to publish it in a major national newspaper, ensuring it would reach as many people as possible. But as the publication date approached, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Strange cars lingered outside her apartment, and her phone buzzed with unknown numbers. She knew the risks, but she also knew she couldn't stop now. The night before the story was set to go live, Amara sat at her desk, staring at the final draft. Her heart raced as she read the headline: "The Slap That Broke the Silence: How a Restaurant's Security Guard Exposed a Web of Corruption." It was everything she had worked for, everything she had risked. But as she hit the send button, a part of her wondered if she had just crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The morning the story broke, the city was abuzz. Amara's exposé was everywhere, front-page news trending on social media, and the topic of every conversation. The headline was bold and unflinching: "The slap that broke the silence: how a restaurant's security guard exposed a web of corruption." The article detailed Marcus's history of aggression, Victor Langston's role in covering it up, and the heartbreaking testimonies of victims like Sophia and Tasha. It was a damning indictment of Elegant Bites and the powerful men who had allowed injustice to thrive. Amara woke up to a flood of messages, some supportive, others threatening. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, and her inbox was overflowing. She turned off her notifications and sat by the window watching the world react to her story. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of relief. The truth was out. Now it was up to the public to decide what to do with it. But the backlash was swift. Victor Langston issued a statement denying all allegations, calling the story a baseless attack on his reputation. He threatened legal action against the newspaper and anyone involved in spreading false information. Marcus, on the other hand, went silent. He was placed on administrative leave from Elegant Bites, but his absence only fueled speculation. The restaurant became the center of a media storm. Protesters gathered outside, holding signs that read "Justice for Amara" and "Shut down Elegant Bites." Former employees began speaking out, sharing their own experiences of harassment and discrimination. The hashtag number "The Slap That Broke the Silence" trended for days, with people from all over the country sharing their stories of injustice. Amara watched it all unfold from a distance. She knew the story had struck a nerve, but she also knew the fight was far from over. Victor Langston wasn't the type to go down without a fight, and Marcus was still out there, somewhere, waiting for the storm to pass. Then, something unexpected happened. Sophia Langston held a press conference. Standing in front of a crowd of reporters, she shared her story in her own words. "For years I stayed silent because I was afraid," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But seeing Amara's courage inspired me to speak up. What happened to me was wrong, and what's happening at Elegant Bites is wrong. It's time for the truth to come out, no matter the cost." Sophia's bravery sparked a new wave of outrage. Politicians called for an investigation into Elegant Bites, and the restaurant's profits plummeted as customers boycotted in droves. Victor Langston's empire was crumbling, and he knew it. But Amara's victory was short-lived. One evening, as she was leaving a meeting with Elena, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The engine was running and the windows were tinted. Her heart raced as she quickened her pace, but the SUV didn't move. She called a cab and kept her eyes on the vehicle until it disappeared into the night. The next morning she received another anonymous message. This one was even more chilling than the last. "You should have listened. Now you'll pay." Amara knew she was in danger, but she also knew she couldn't back down. She had come too far to let fear stop her now. She reached out to Elena, who arranged for her to stay at a safe house until things calmed down. But as she packed her bags, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The safe house was a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood where no one would think to look for her. Amara spent her days there, poring over new leads and monitoring the fallout from her story. The public outcry had only grown louder, and pressure was mounting on Victor Langston. Investigations into Elegant Bites were underway, and Marcus had gone into hiding, his face plastered across news outlets as a symbol of unchecked power and abuse. But Amara knew the fight wasn't over. Victor was still a powerful man, and he had resources she couldn't even begin to imagine. The anonymous threats continued, each one more menacing than the last. She tried to stay focused, but the constant fear was wearing her down. One evening, as she was reviewing footage from a protest outside Elegant Bites, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering, her heart pounding. "Amara Johnson?" a deep voice asked. "Who is this?" She replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "My name is Detective Harris. I'm with the city's Special Investigations Unit. We've been looking into Victor Langston for years, but we've never had enough to bring him down. Your story, it's given us the break we needed." Amara's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "We've been building a case against Victor for money laundering, bribery, and corruption," Harris explained, "but we've never been able to tie him directly to the abuses at Elegant Bites. Your evidence, especially Sophia Langston's testimony, changes everything. We'd like you to come in and work with us." Amara's mind raced. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, a chance to hold Victor accountable, not just for Marcus's actions, but for everything he had done. But she also knew the risks. If Victor found out she was working with the police, he would stop at nothing to silence her. "I'll do it," she said finally, "but I need protection." "You'll have it," Harris assured her. "We'll send a car to pick you up tomorrow morning. Be ready." The next day, Amara was escorted to the police station where she met with Detective Harris and his team. They spent hours going over her evidence, cross-referencing it with their own findings. It was exhausting work, but Amara felt a renewed sense of purpose. For the first time, she wasn't fighting alone. Meanwhile, Victor Langston was growing desperate. His lawyers were scrambling to contain the damage, but the public had turned against him. His businesses were under scrutiny, his reputation in tatters, and then there was Marcus, the loose end he couldn't afford to leave untied. One night, as Amara was leaving the police station, she received a call from an unrecognized number. She almost didn't answer, but something compelled her to pick up. "Amara," a voice whispered. It was Marcus. Her blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore. Victor's going to throw me under the bus. I have proof of everything he's done. But I need your help." Amara's mind raced. Was this a trap? Or was Marcus really willing to turn on Victor? She knew she couldn't trust him, but she also knew this could be the key to bringing Victor down for good. "Where are you?" she asked. "I'll text you the address," Marcus said. "But you have to come alone. If Victor finds out I'm talking to you, I'm dead." Amara hung up and stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She knew meeting Marcus was risky, but she also knew this could be her only chance to get the evidence she needed. She called Detective Harris and explained the situation. "It's too dangerous," Harris said. "Let us handle it." "If Marcus sees cops, he'll bolt," Amara argued. "I have to do this, but I'll wear a wire and you can be close by. Just let me try." After a long pause, Harris agreed. "Be careful," he said. "We'll be watching." That night, Amara drove to the address Marcus had sent, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. Her hands were shaking as she stepped out of the car, the wire hidden beneath her jacket. She took a deep breath and walked inside, her heart pounding in her chest. Marcus was waiting for her, his face pale and drawn. He looked nothing like the intimidating figure she had encountered at Elegant Bites. "You came," he said, relief flooding his voice. "I'm here," Amara replied. "What do you have?" Marcus handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on here, bank records, emails, recordings. Victor's been laundering money for years, and he's been paying off officials to look the other way. He's the one who covered up my past. He's the one who made me untouchable." Amara took the flash drive, her mind racing. This was it. The evidence they needed to bring Victor down. But before she could say anything, the sound of tires screeching outside made them both freeze. "He's here," Marcus whispered, his face filled with terror. "You have to go now." Amara didn't need to be told twice. She ran for the back exit, her heart pounding as she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She didn't look back, she just ran. Amara sprinted through the dark alley behind the warehouse, clutching the flash drive tightly in her hand. The sound of shouting and heavy footsteps echoed behind her, but she didn't dare look back. Her heart pounded as she rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a chain-link fence. She scrambled over it, her hands scraping against the metal, and landed hard on the other side. She could hear Detective Harris's voice crackling through the wire. "Amara, we're closing in. Stay where you are." But Amara couldn't stop. She knew Victor's men were close and she couldn't risk losing the evidence. She ran until her lungs burned, finally ducking into a narrow alleyway and pressing herself against the wall. She could hear the sound of sirens in the distance, growing louder by the second. Moments later, Detective Harris and his team arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Amara!" Harris called out, his voice filled with urgency. "Here!" she shouted, stepping out of the shadows. Her hands were still trembling as she handed him the flash drive. "It's all here. Everything we need." Harris nodded, his expression grim. "We've got Marcus. He's in custody, but Victor's men got away. We'll find them." Amara's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground, her breath coming in ragged gasps. It was over. She had done it. The evidence was safe, and Victor's empire was crumbling. The next few days were a whirlwind. The flash drive contained a treasure trove of incriminating information. Bank records, emails, and audio recordings that implicated Victor Langston in money laundering, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The media exploded with the news, and Victor was arrested within hours. His lawyers fought to keep him out of jail, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus, in a desperate bid for leniency, agreed to testify against Victor. His testimony, combined with the evidence Amara had gathered, sealed Victor's fate. The once powerful businessman was charged with multiple felonies, and his assets were frozen pending trial. Amara's story became a rallying cry for justice. Protests outside Elegant Bites turned into celebrations as the restaurant was shut down permanently. Sophia Langston emerged as a symbol of resilience, her bravery inspiring others to come forward with their own stories of abuse and corruption. The hashtag number, "The Slap That Broke the Silence," trended for weeks, sparking a national conversation about power, privilege, and accountability. But for Amara, the victory was bittersweet. She had achieved what she set out to do, but the cost had been high. The threats, the fear, the sleepless nights, it had all taken a toll. She spent weeks recovering, leaning on friends and colleagues for support. Detective Harris checked in on her regularly, ensuring she was safe and offering his gratitude for her courage. One evening, as she sat in her apartment watching the sunset, Amara received a call from Sophia. "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice filled with emotion. "You gave me my voice back. You gave all of us a chance to be heard." Amara smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "We did it together," she said. "This was never just about me." In the months that followed, Amara's life slowly returned to normal. She continued her work as a journalist, but her focus shifted. She began writing about systemic injustice, using her platform to amplify the voices of those who had been silenced for too long. Her story became a beacon of hope, proof that one person's courage could spark a movement. Victor Langston was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison, his empire reduced to rubble. Marcus received a lighter sentence in exchange for his cooperation, but his name would forever be tied to the scandal that brought down one of the city's most powerful men. As for Amara, she knew her fight wasn't over. There were still injustices to uncover, stories to tell, and battles to win, but for the first time in a long time she felt at peace. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, her voice louder than ever. And as she sat down to write her next story, she knew one thing for certain: the truth would always find a way to be heard.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.